So in 2022, Swalwell requested an opinion from the FEC asking, can I use my campaign money to subsidize childcare costs? The reason he did that is because under federal campaign law, you, a candidate, are prohibited from using campaign funds for personal use. What is personal use? Those are expenses that would exist regardless of whether you are in a campaign or carrying out your official duties. So this FEC opinion allowed the use of campaign funds when Swalwell travels for his own campaign and if his spouse can't provide care. So this was actually a controversial decision. So he actually was authorized by the FEC to do this. Now, I think the FEC was wrong in reaching this decision because, in my view, childcare is inherently personal use. It's an expense that candidates with young children will incur regardless of whether they're in a campaign. I have childcare costs. Many people have childcare costs, and we can't just use this other money to subsidize, our thing. So it's the danger here is creating a special class of politicians who are insulated from normal constraints, ordinary constraints that everybody else has to deal with, because most people absorb the childcare costs as part of their own job and part of their own life. But after this FEC decision, which again applies specifically to Swalwell's campaign, candidates could, if this became some type of precedent, externalize their childcare costs to donors. And that's wrong because campaign law exists not to underwrite the private lives of politicians, but to ensure that political speech is protected and that public advocacy occurs, that we have electoral competition. The election laws are in place to try to maintain the integrity of our electoral system, and that decision, I think, undermines the integrity of the system. The reason why this is or ought not to be common is because it opens the slippery slope. So the rationale of the decision was, Swalwell would not have incurred these costs but for the fact that he is campaigning for federal office. Well, by that logic, there are all kinds of costs that you would not have incurred but for the fact that you're running for office. You, for example, might not have bought all these new suits but for the fact that you are running for office. Now, we know it's a long-standing rule that it's a long-standing understanding that people cannot use campaign funds for clothing. But by this logic, that would suggest otherwise. So it goes for meals, grooming, haircuts, all kinds of things that could now conceivably be justified that should be classified as personal use. Well, childcare is inherently personal use. It's an expense that candidates with children incur regardless of whether they're in a campaign. And campaign funds are designed to advance political speech and electoral competition, not to underwrite the private lives of politicians. So I think this FEC decision that allowed Swalwell to use campaign funds for childcare when his wife was not present blurred the boundary between public advocacy and private consumption. So as I mentioned, I think that decision creates a special class for politicians and it insulates them from ordinary constraints. And the rest of us, we have to absorb childcare costs as part of our everyday life. And it's not fair to allow candidates to externalize those costs to donors when election law is meant to preserve the integrity of our elections, to prevent corruption, to prevent fraud, to prevent all these bad things.